Respected Hawaii economist Paul Brewbaker returned to EAH to share his insightful economic analysis. In this third video, Paul focuses on Hawaii's economy. The longest expansion in U.S. history ended with COVID, but Hawaii's economy started its downturn in 2017 with the start of anti-science and anti-tourism forces. There are fewer people employed today in Hawaii than 8 years ago. Hawaii's pandemic recovery was impacted by people working from home. He explains who's working from home and why the lowest paid had the highest pay increases, and why home workers caused increased home prices but not condo prices.
Engineers and Architects of Hawaii has been meeting for over 120 years. The 1-hour lunchtime meetings on Fridays serves engineers, architects, technical professionals, and the public. We provide a venue for timely briefings and discussions of current and emerging technologies and important community issues. To continue to meet our goals, EAH needs the support from the community's technical professionals and the public. If you have or know of a relevant topic, contact EAH so we can arrange a date to present the topic at an EAH Friday meeting. Also, please join us at one of our live meetings, either in person or via Zoom. Past meetings are published on YouTube and on Hawaii's Olelo Community Television, Channel 53. Visit the EAH website for publications, information, and links. Mahalo.
Thanks for inviting me back. It's been a while. The theme here is mostly about uncertainty and its role in the economic outlook. But this is more just, 5 things I'm sort of curious about these days that I don't hear anybody else talking about. So let's jump right in. Okay, so those are sort of the national things. I want to just focus on a couple local things quickly. This is a remarkable moment for me. This is the number of persons employed in Hawaii. And you remember, this is the longest expansion in history, not just American history, in history. And the only reason it ended because of global pandemic. Yeah. That's the only reason we had a recession in 2020. We just sort of kept on going and done a bunch of generative AI, and then the robots would have taken over, and we had robot wars, and then a dystopian future for the survivors. I don't know. I mean, we were on cruise control in the longest expansion in history, not just American history, at least as far as these things are measured. And then we had a sudden stop from COVID. But wait, Hawaii got off the freeway in 2017. Hawaii had a recession in 2018 and 2019. I don't remember anybody talking about it. I'm going to a conference going, you know that employment is falling, right? Falling. Fewer people are working. Are you not concerned about that? And this was Ige and, the LG, Governor Green, they're all like, it's all good. We don't build telescopes in Hawaii. We dismantle them, right? That's all that stuff was going on. Who won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 2021 for inventing CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology? Jennifer Daoudna, a graduate of Hilo High School, Jennifer Daoudna, won the Nobel Prize for inventing the technology that the corn seed guys are using to do, maize genomics in Hawaii. 10 years ago, Hawaii's largest agricultural activity and 1/4 of all Hawaii agriculture 10 years ago, and now virtually gone because CRISPR-Cas9 was banned on the Big Island, in Maui, and on Kauai. And when I say banned, I mean public referenda prohibited transgenic modification. Any word, got to watch out for transportation, because if you put trans in front, you're dead. Transgenic modification, POW, no matter, the court said, you can't do that. That moment is a really interesting one to me, when the anti-science denialism and the anti-tourism denialism began to be embraced by leadership at county and state government levels. And to me, it's still kind of an amorphous thing. But you got to look, here's an example. You look at the 2021 Destination Management Action Plan of the Hawaii Tourism Authority for Oahu, and the #1 goal is, and I quote, to decrease the total number of visitors to Oahu. That's pretty unambiguous. The goal is to decrease the total number of visitors to Oahu. Right? No ambiguity there. So it's working. The economy stalled before the pandemic and has trouble recovering since the pandemic. Although I am encouraged, this is the first half of 2025. We'll see if it's get revised out. Okay, so that's just to benchmark where we are. There are fewer persons employed today than there were 8 years ago on Oahu, or statewide, and about half of those are on Maui, partly because of the wildfire. Now, if you look at labor market conditions, the ratio, people talk about the unemployment rate, it's important, but I think it's interesting to look at the ratio of the vacancy rate to the unemployment rate. So you can think of supply or demand and supply. The vacancy rate, right, the number of jobs that are unfilled as a percent of the workforce, divided by the number of persons out of work and looking for work as a percent of the workforce. So the vacancy rate, V over U, the unemployment rate, when it's high, there's a lot of people looking for jobs and not a lot of people out of work to fill them, right? So that moment in the late 20 teens when Hawaii stalled out was a moment where the labor market got really tight. We had a really tight labor market in Hawaii. And then the pandemic came and relieved the pressure slightly. But then after, we had that big resortment, right, where people were like, F this job. I'm not going back to that stupid job. I'm going to get COVID working at the bar, you know. So the Great Resignation, as we call it. The other, two extraordinary things happened. People in the lowest wage quantiles had the highest pay increases proportionately. People in the highest earnings quantiles had the smallest wage increases post-pandemic, because people in the high income, high skill occupations and activities had the option of remote work, had the option of amenities instead of pay that were preferable to them. And they, in many cases, chose those options, where people in the low income quantiles, you know, working at fast food places. But if you've driven around, you can see, you know, is McDonald's still paying $18 to start? Plus there's a bonus if you work after 10 p.m. That's to start. That's not too bad, right? I don't know what the minimum wage is, but that seems kind of okay to work at McDonald's. So those pressures have abated, and you might say, well, this is a good thing, it's come down. A ratio of 1 where these are equal seems about right. 1.2, you know, historically is sort of proper balance. But the bad news is we're going back down. The unemployment rate's been constant. So we're seeing this ratio subside because the vacancies are disappearing. And that's a problem, you know, for people graduating and whatnot. So keep your eyes on it. You know, this is the end of the Great Recession over here. So this long arc was a good period to be working in Hawaii, right? More companies looking to hire than sort of people. You sort of had your pick. Right now we're headed in the other direction. But here's some detail. The hires have been coming off the pandemic resurgence. Layoffs are rising slightly. Now, I'm encouraged by this, but I think this is June, or sorry, this is May. I'm told the state's been poaching displaced federal workers. So there may be a bunch of job creation that's coming from, you know, just you have all these vacancies in the state government, county governments, and then you have some, you know, in particular skilled federal workers who have been displaced for one reason or another. So we'll see how that plays out. The labor market's in relative balance, but I want to focus now on a more structural shift. So this is a proportion of persons that essentially work from home. Pre-pandemic, it wasn't even, pre-pandemic we called it shirking from home. Now we call it working from home, right? And HR has had to go through a whole, you know, cultural shift. They want you to return to office, and you're like, why? Why would I return to the office? You need to pay me more to sit at, did you drive home for the tsunami the other day? It's like, why commute? Why do that every day? So nationwide, working from home settled at about 25 to 30%, and in Hawaii, it's settled at about 25%. 25%, very stable, you can see. By the way, the federal government's no longer conducting these surveys. Shoot, this is a great survey. Money. But it looks stable to me. In fact, it's so stable you can kind of see some seasonal variation. So who are these people? Well, they're the highly educated, and therefore the persons who have higher incomes. A majority of persons in households making over 200,000 a year work remotely, either full-time or hybrid. A majority of workers in Hawaii in households earning $200,000 or more work remotely because they got the skills, right? They get, the math people with critical thinking, analytical skills can sit at a computer. Look at what we're doing today. Why did I catch the bus to downtown? I could have Zoomed. Because I hate driving. That's why I caught the bus downtown. How does this affect the economy? These are home prices or home valuations. And I've got Maui and Oahu. I've taken out the inflation. So you can see the cycles, the Japan bubble, the subprime bubble. And here's this little post-pandemic. That's a remote work bubble. Because people's housing preferences shifted. Once they didn't have to drive into the office, they realized they could live in Waialua. And so after the pandemic, there's this big shift in single family home prices, not condos. Condos are in the urban core. And most of the people living, the young professionals and the empty nesters that have moved back into town because the kids have grown up and, they want to go to Foodland Farms and Nordstrom's. Anyway, that's what's happening with valuations. So an extraordinary but transitory kind of overshoot premium on single family median prices. And this stabilization looks like a permanent premium of about 8% relative to trend. So now I've detrended. So here's the prices. And then I ran these regressions for the 20 teens. Actually, these regressions are fairly stable over time. So you get 2 to 2.5% annualized appreciation after inflation on an investment in a house. That's the capital gain. The dividend is you get to live in the house or collect rent from the people who live in the house. Okay, so that looks pretty stable to me. I know people say home prices shouldn't go up, and like, why would you buy the house if the price is not going to go up? Because you can rent the housing services. Anyway, in nominal terms, 2.5%, 2 to 2.5% works out to 4 or 5% for single family and condo homes. And then when you detrend, you can see how distinctive is the post-pandemic single family deviation from long-term trend. By the way, the good news for young professionals, condos are kind of a bargain. They'll never be cheap because this is Honolulu, not Oklahoma City. Okay? All these people, we need for affordable housing. Like, so we're never going to have cheap housing in Hawaii because it's Hawaii, right? If it was cheap, all the Okies would move here and bid up the price of house. Oh, there we are, right? We did move here and we bid up the price of house. If you look at detrended prices on Maui, the condos are responding because the condos on the neighbor islands are in resort areas. And that's where the remote workers from California who don't have to be next to the Facebook campus anymore, although Facebook had return to office, right? But there's a bunch of tech people who move to the neighbor islands, and they're not going to live in Kahului. They're going to live in Wailea, in a condo. Although now that the mayor is talking about burning short-term rentals, condo prices are in collapse. And this kind of cracks me up. They've got this policy. We're gonna burn all the vacation rentals. Okay? And so if everybody has to sell the condos in the resorts, and we'll burn the guys that existing owners, right? And their, vacation rental incomes, then the next guys will have a cheap condo. And okay, how much your price is going to fall? 25% by 2028. That's the theory. That's the mayor's thesis. Well, just talking about it, like the minute you start the minute you start talking about burning the vacation rental owners, they bail. They list their homes. They're not going to wait to see if you're going to burn. They're not going to wait for the lawsuits to be settled over the next 8 years. They're like, I'm out of here. I can buy an Airbnb anywhere. F you, Maui. So those condo prices have already fallen 25 to 30%. Do you see anybody celebrating how affordable Maui is now? Because the prices already fell. And by the way, they just fell back to trend. Why would they go under trend? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But that's literally the county's theory. And the Star Advertiser endorses it. So you know how smart those guys are.
In the final video, Paul explains Maui's plan to shut down vacation rentals. He explains that generative AI has been used to discourage Maui visitors.
Yeah, we'll get your bid.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes.
For those of us with jobs, have fun going back. All right.
Yeah.
Engineers and architects of Hawaii welcome your comment on this program and any of our recent programs. We encourage your direct participation in this community outreach. So please email us your comments and ideas at eahawaii@gmail.com.